Denmark has won the world's happiest country awards so many times that most people have lost count. Right now, almost 500,000 Danish people, that's 1 in every 10 people, take pills to feel better. Strange for the happiest country, right? That's the Denmark you don't see in pretty pictures. Walk down any street in Copenhagen and you'll see something that would shock most people. Babies sleeping in their strollers outside cafes while parents drink coffee inside. That's how safe and perfect Denmark looks. Danish people trust their country so much that they pay the highest taxes in the world without complaining. They get free doctors, free schools, and lots of holidays. But talk to Sarah, who lives in one of those beautiful Copenhagen houses. We all try to look happy all the time, she says, but inside our perfect homes, many of us are struggling. We just can't show it. Sarah isn't alone. New studies show that many young Danish people feel lonely, newcomers feel left out, and the pressure to look perfect is making people sad. Today, we're going behind those perfect Danish doors. We'll see what really happens in a country where everyone must look happy all the time. Denmark shows the world a beautiful picture. Workers here only work 37 hours each week and get 5 weeks of paid holidays. When people get sick, they don't pay anything at hospitals. Everything is free. Students get free school, free college, and the government even gives them money to study. New parents stay home with their babies for a whole year, and their jobs pay them during this time. Most workers in Denmark earn around 44,000 kroner, $6,400 every month. Women make almost the same money as men for doing the same work. Crime is very low, so low that small-town police stations are only open for a few hours each day. The streets are clean, and people feel safe. City looks like something from a fairy tale. People ride bikes everywhere on special bike roads. Kids play in clean parks. The shops show beautiful Danish furniture and home things. Danish homes are warm and cozy, with candles burning and families spending time together. They even have a special word for this cozy feeling, hygge. The Danish government runs differently too. People who work in the government don't take extra money under the table. Even the most important politicians ride bikes to work, just like normal people. The king and queen shop at regular stores. Danish people trust their government so much that almost everyone votes. 9 out of 10 people. They even pay their taxes honestly because they think it's the right thing to do. These good things make Denmark look perfect. News stories around the world talk about how wonderful life is here. But appearances can trick us. Behind these happy numbers and clean streets, there's another side of Denmark that most people never see. After seeing all these amazing things about Denmark, you might wonder why so many Danes feel stressed and worried. Let me share something interesting. In this happiest country, more than 500,000 people take medicine for depression and anxiety. That's 1 out of every 10 people in Denmark. Pretty shocking, right? There's an old Danish rule that everyone knows but no one writes down. Danes call it janteloven. It's simple. It means you shouldn't think you're better than others, you shouldn't show off, and you should always try to be like everyone else. While this might sound friendly, it actually makes life really hard for many people. Let me tell you about Peter, a high school student in Copenhagen. At school, nobody wants to raise their hand too much in class, he says. If you do, other kids think you're showing off. Even if you know the answer, sometimes it's better to stay quiet. Danish schools don't give grades until students are older. They do this to stop kids from competing, but this makes many students worry because they don't know if they're doing well. Remember those short working hours we talked about earlier? Well, here's the catch. If everyone goes home at 3:30 p.m. and you stay later, people don't think you're working hard. Instead, they think something's wrong with you. Lisa, who works in an office, told me, "It's easier to tell your boss you're stressed and need time off than to say you want to work extra hours to get ahead." All this pressure to be normal and perfect is causing big problems. Young people feel they can't talk about their worries. Adults feel they can't share their problems. Everyone tries to look happy all the time, even when they're not. And this is just part of the story. What happens when someone from another country tries to fit into this system? Well, that's what we'll talk about next. Now let's look at what happens when someone from another country moves to Denmark. While Danish people say everyone is welcome, the real story shows something different. Take Ali's story, for example. He moved to Denmark from Turkey 4 years ago. "People smile at me on the street," he says, but getting a job or making Danish friends feels almost impossible. Let's look at some real numbers. Only 14 out of every 100 people in Denmark come from other countries. But here's the surprising part. Half of these people end up living in what Danish people call rough neighborhoods. These are places where most Danish people don't want to live. It's like there are invisible walls in the city, separating Danes from newcomers. Here's something that shows how hard it is. Researchers did a test. They sent out the exact same job application with different names. When the name sounded foreign, like Mohammed or Elena, only 48 out of 100 people got called for an interview. But when the name sounded Danish, like Anders or Marie, almost all of them got calls. Same skills, different names, different chances. Even learning perfect Danish doesn't always help. Maria from Spain has lived here for 6 years and speaks Danish really well. But she says, at work parties, Danish people mostly talk to other Danes. I try to join conversations, but it feels like there's an invisible wall I can't get through. The problem starts early, right from school. In Copenhagen, some schools have almost no Danish kids, while others have almost no immigrant kids. How did this happen? Many Danish parents move their kids to different schools if they think there are too many immigrant children in class. The government tries to fix this by making new rules, like saying immigrant families can't live in certain areas. But these rules often make people feel even more left out. Think about how hard this is in a small country like Denmark, where everyone seems to know everyone else. When you're left out here, you really feel it. And remember that pressure to be perfect we talked about earlier? Now imagine feeling that pressure while also trying to learn a new language, understand new rules, and fit into a culture that often keeps you at arm's length. You might think that in a country where everything seems perfect, people would spend lots of time together. But here's something surprising. Denmark has one of the highest numbers of people living alone in the world. In Copenhagen, more than 40 out of every 100 people live by themselves. That's almost half the city. Young Danish people are feeling this loneliness the most. A recent study showed that 1 out of every 4 young Danes feels lonely often. This might sound strange in a time when everyone has phones and social media, but Thomas, a 22-year-old student, explains it well. Sure, we text and use Instagram all day, but real friendships? Those are harder to find. Everyone's so busy trying to look perfect online that we forget how to connect in real life. Danish culture plays a big part in this. Danes are famous for keeping to themselves. They don't talk to strangers on buses or strike up conversations in cafes. While this gives people privacy, it also makes it really hard to make new friends. Sarah, who lives in Aarhus, told me, if you don't make friends in school or through sports clubs, it's really hard to meet people later. We're all so focused on our own perfect little worlds. The way Danish cities are built adds to this problem. Yes, the apartments are beautiful and the streets are clean, but many people live in buildings where they never talk to their neighbors. Even though there are nice parks and public spaces everywhere, people often sit alone with their phones or headphones in. The cold, dark winters make things worse. For almost half the year, it gets dark at 3:30 p.m. Many people go straight home after work and stay inside. Even though Danish homes are cozy with their candles and warm lights, sitting alone every evening can feel pretty. How much all of this perfect life costs? Because living in Denmark might look wonderful, but the price tag, that's what we need to talk about next. Let's talk about money in Denmark. Sure, Danish people earn good salaries. About 44,000 Danish kroner, around $6,400 per month on average. Sounds great, right? But wait until you hear how much everything costs. First, let's look at taxes. Danish workers give almost half of their salary to the government. If you earn $100, you end up keeping only about $55. Yes, this pays for all those free things we talked about earlier. Healthcare, education, and good roads. But it also means most people have less money than you might think. Housing costs are a big problem, especially in Copenhagen. A simple one-bedroom apartment in the city costs around 12,000 kroner, $1,750 per month to rent. That's more than many people can afford. Martin, a teacher, told me, I earn what's supposed to be a good salary, but after paying rent and bills, I can barely save any money. Many young Danes still live with their parents because they can't afford their own place. Even everyday things are super expensive. A cup of coffee costs about $6. A basic lunch at a cafe? That's $20. Going to the movies? $18 per ticket. A regular grocery shopping trip for one person easily costs $100. Remember those cozy Danish restaurants you see on Instagram? Most Danes only eat out on special occasions because a dinner for two can cost more than $100. Some Danes are struggling more than others. A study showed that 1 in 8 Danish families has trouble paying their bills on time. But because everyone's supposed to look perfect, people rarely talk about money problems. They keep smiling and pretending everything's fine, even when their bank account is almost empty. So, what have we learned about Denmark's perfect society? It's like a beautiful Instagram photo. Looks amazing on the surface, but there's a lot of editing behind the scenes. Yes, Denmark has free healthcare, great schools, and clean streets. But these nice things come with hidden costs. Many Danes feel pressure to be perfect all the time. They take pills for depression while smiling for the world. Young people feel lonely in their expensive apartments. Newcomers struggle to feel at home, even after years of trying to fit in. Think about Marie, Peter, Ali, and all the other people we met in this story. They're living in what the world calls the happiest country, but their daily lives tell a different story. They're dealing with stress, loneliness, and money worries, just like people everywhere else. Does this mean Denmark is a bad place? Not at all, but it shows us something important. No society is perfect, even when it looks that way from the outside. Maybe the real lesson here is that chasing perfection, whether as a person or as a country, comes with its own set of problems. Next time you hear someone talk about perfect Danish life, remember, every paradise has its problems. They're just harder to see when everyone's trying so hard to look perfect. This concludes our deep dive into Denmark's hidden reality.